Hi there, it's Leandra from PaperArtsy again with you, and topic 1 on our blog this year for 2015 is fragile papers. Today I just wanted to give you a really quick start idea to make a very simple background. I'm going to use mine to cover this canvas, which is one of our really nice and affordable 4x6 canvases. They're really solid and they make great little chunky things. So that's going to get covered with this piece of paper. I kind of got in my head that I'm going to go for shades of purples and ochre yellow colours, and so I think I'll do my background in this sort of ochre tones that I'm really quite addicted to. And so that I've got a little idea of the size of the canvas, I've actually folded my paper here, and so that if I need to make perhaps the edges a little bit darker I can, and I've also marked lines on there in pencil so that I can see where the canvas lines are going to be, so that that will fit around there. Okay, so it's just a guide. So same Brayered technique that I showed you the other day. I've got 5 colours: toffee, caramel and vanilla. I've also got haystack and pumpkin soup. Pumpkin soup's the only translucent, the rest of them are all opaque. So I think we'll start with the darkest one and then lighten it off. And this one's toffee, and because it's dark, I'm thinking that I'll work it on these crease lines first, and I haven't put very much on my brayer or on the palette at all. So let's just start off the edge and just bring that through, and I'm just going to work virtually along those fold lines that I made earlier. Just sort of gives me an idea of where those borders are, and I'm not putting a lot on there, just a small amount. Okay, that's good. Now let's contrast that and go to a light shade. This is vanilla, and when you use a light shade like this, the words will start to get knocked back a little bit, which is what I want to happen, but I don't want them to be obliterated totally. So I've also got a baby wipe handy, and then I can sponge it back if I need to, if I get a bit too carried away. So we'll just again start off the edge, bring it through, and if you rub it in quite quickly, you'll see the words then start to come through anyway, because you're dispersing that paint. It's just about knocking it back a little bit. Okay, so let's notch that up. Haystack. Again, just the tiniest spot. And this should start to add a little bit of warmth, but it's very, very opaque. So again, I'm just aware the more layers I add, the more chance I have of eradicating some of these words altogether. So I'm just bearing that in mind as I go. Take it gently. It doesn't matter on the sides so much. It's mainly on this sort of very central section I've got to be careful not to get too carried away. Okay, caramel. Again, just a small amount. And I'm going to go back to my toffee, which was the first one I started with, and just build a bit more depth with that. Back down those lines. Okay, so pumpkin soup's our translucent, so it's never going to obliterate anything, it's just going to add more warmth. It's a very bright, warm sort of a colour. Let's just see what happens if we just soften it through a bit. So I'm going to put a little bit on, and then just take the baby wipe and soften that through. And see, you just sort of start to get a much heavier coverage down in the dippy bits, because you do sort of create texture as you're brayering. So if you come over with the pumpkin soup like this, then you're going to start to soften it through using the baby wipe as sort of like it's almost like using a damp brush. Okay, back to that darker colour again, just for a little bit more definition, and then I think we're almost there. Again, soften that through if you want a softer look. And you can even pick it up off the palette if you want to add it just to certain areas. Okay, I don't want to do too much at this stage. I just needed to get a bit of colour on there. I'm just going to finish like I always do with the very lightest shade, which is vanilla, particularly on this sort of front square section. So the face, what will be the sort of the face area of the canvas, I just want to knock that back on its own. So if I use those lines, those crease lines, then I can have a little bit better control, because then this will stand out as just being that little bit softer than the rest. Because this is the main panel of the canvas, this is the bit that needs to pop. So that's why I kind of want that a little bit lighter than the rest. And we can still just make the very frame a little bit darker. So let's just get a tiny bit of the toffee and run that around the edge there. Cool, easy. Okay, that's great. So that's all done. Now what I just got to do is stick that onto my canvas. So I've covered my piece of paper that I made earlier onto the back, onto the canvas, and I just used a gel medium to do that. I haven't sealed the top, I just applied the glue in between to the canvas and to the back of the paper. When you're working with old fragile papers like this, they're quite absorbent of the glue, they're quite sucky, so you end up using more glue than you anticipate. What I do is put the glue on the canvas first and then the glue on the paper, and then the two stick together, and they usually then form a really strong bond. Then I just sort of folded all the sides down and made the corners look tidy, and it's even rolled all the way around to the back. And this is what's great about when you work onto box canvases, if you can just take your design all the way around the sides, it looks really cohesive right from the get-go. So I've got a plan for decorating this, and it incorporates this tissue, Brayered tissue paper, which I have created in a separate video, part 3 of my Brayered background videos. And I'm using the Ellen Vargo stamps, these 3 lovely flowers which we released with her in September 2014. They're just fantastic. They're really nice for your journaling projects because the flowers are just quite a decent size. So here's one on an A5 acrylic block. As you can see, it takes up the whole block, so nice size, and it's going to be a really nice size to use on this canvas. So the plan is this: I'm going to I've stamped it out once onto a piece of the smoothie paper which I created in one of the background videos, the Brayered background videos. That's going to go on here, and then I have created a bunch of other little embellishments. They're all wooden items, most of them are from Prima, or they're little metal flowers that we sell. This is a little charm that actually comes off a necklace. We sell those in packets of 5 or 6. There's little wooden Prima frames, and again that's another little bead that it's all been painted. So the frescoes cover metal, wood, all, and this is one of those Prima stone embellishments. It covers that no problem at all. So I started with purples, and then dry brushed some Bora Bora on there and a bit of mermaid, and I've just sort of built up the layers gradually by dry brushing. So all of those are going to form a little background onto this canvas. So I'll probably ground it at the bottom with that. I've got a bobbin. These are the bobbins that we sell, and sometimes we cut them in half so that you can then stick them flat, and that's just been wrapped with twine, which just makes it a little bit more interesting. Is it better that way? I don't know which way it's better. Maybe that way. And we've got another little embellishment here, so this is all going to get stuck down eventually. That'll go somewhere like that. Perhaps we'll have this might go on the end here, and maybe that one can go up the top there, something like that. Once I've got those all stuck in place, I will actually put a little bit of treasure gold on the edges of all of these embellishments, and it will just give them a nice little pop and sparkle. But the main focus is going to be the flower, and my plan for the flower was to create lots of layers using the stamp, and this is why I wanted to make my background onto the tissue paper, because I wanted to have the softness and to be able to build the layers and for it to look really pretty that way. So I stamped just the flower head 6 times onto the background with my archival ink. I decided to use archival coffee because I thought the black was just a little bit too harsh, so I used coffee archival, which is just a nice sort of dark brown. And you can see here that each of the flowers I actually stamped it 6 times. I've already got 2 layered up on this one, but each time I cut it, I cut a little bit more away so that these are going to sort of layer up on top of each other. But to get them to layer up really nicely, you need to start using foam pads. So what I do is I put a little spot of glue at the very bottom just to anchor it at the base, and the glue won't work. Right, so this is just Ranger Glossy Accents, which is a handy little glue, very quick. Pop that there, and then you can lay that on. Make sure that that's all in the right position. Right, so that will stick almost immediately. And then I'm just using foam pads, and you can probably see in there that I've just got little foam pads in between the first 3 layers I've already done. So now I just need to add some more in there, and it will just give it that little bit of depth and make it all sort of stand out a little bit more. Well, these are the tiniest foam pads in the world, so they're fiddly little critters. But as you get to it was really fiddly on the lower layers, it's not going to be quite so bad now. I'm just going to put 3 there. So I've got 1, 2, 3. Try and get the top layer off with tissue paper, because it's fragile, isn't the easiest thing to do. 1, 2, yay, 3. Right, and then I want to, oops, don't stick yet. I want to just give it a bit of movement if I can. So if I sort of pucker it on there a bit, it's got my nail. Let go. There we go. Hope for the best. And you see that starts to develop a little bit more movement in the layers. Oh gosh, we've created something new. What's this, like tissue decoupage or something? Who knew? So you just keep doing the same thing, layering onto there, and then that is all going to get stuck down onto my little canvas, and then hopefully all the colours will work really nicely together. So there you go. I'll come back and I'll show you the finished thing when I've got it all assembled, but quite a quick and easy project and quite a lot of fun to make. So now you can see the final piece all assembled. I just literally stuck the things down with matte medium because it's a very strong glue that you need to use when you're putting dimensional objects on. I tickled over the top with White Fire Treasure Gold, which is just, I used a really small brush. I like to use a really fine brush like that, and I just pick up the smallest amount, scooch the excess off onto a piece of paper, and then just tickle it over the top. The smallest amount is all you need, otherwise you get, great big honking amounts. So just want to sort of scratch it on there and take your time, build it up really, really slowly. It adds such a nice little finishing touch to anything, especially little things like here. On the dark colours it really pops. So like where you've got the flower, I painted it sort of a dark purple, and then you add the treasure gold on top. It really highlights that texture of the flower, and the same with the memories across the top here. And again, just the smallest amount tickled over the top. I prefer not to use my finger when I apply treasure gold. I find I have much more control using a brush on small areas. I also took a little bit of treasure gold just around the very edges of the frame, and before I did that, I even used the Fabralo pens. These are a watercolour pen, and they're come in all kinds. This is the student set, but they come in a much bigger set than that. I took the brown one, and again, you can just sort of tickle it along the plane there, and then if you've got a damp brush, you can soften it out, and it will just add a little bit of shading. So I did that all the way, like along here, along the edge of the flower, and again, just sort of take it and soften it through, and then use your finger to just sort of spread it. But I did that there, and I also did it around the sides of the canvas, and it just adds a little bit of depth and shadowing. The most complicated thing was just assembling the flower. You saw me do a little bit of that before, but there you can sort of hopefully see the texture of the flower and how it all sort of layers up, and that's just really the feature of the whole thing, is those different little bits of layers, picking out different aspects of the design using the nice Brayered paper that we started with. So that's it, a very simple way to use fragile papers as a background, and also using them as a feature for the flower. We'll see you back here next time on the PaperArtsy YouTube channel.